I feel in order to move forward, I have to first educate you on this very big concept that every security expert is expected to know. It's called social engineering. So, do you have any idea what that would mean just by the words? Social engineering.
Is it something to do with the people?
Exactly. Okay. So, social engineering is really the use of conversation, of social interactions,
Mm,
where you can be able to use different methods of manipulation, of conversation, of deception in order to gather information from your target. Like this conversation right now, like in the times we've talked, you have you have asked me you've asked me certain things of a personal nature. So for all I knew, you could have potentially been asking me to give away personal facts about myself, which you could have used to your advantage.
mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, this is actually because of another thing that people tend to do. Oftentimes when we're making passwords or we're making passcodes, it's often by using words or numbers that are significant to us. Like,
That's
look me in
true.
the eye right now, and can you tell me, do you have at least one password where you use a number or a word that's of importance to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And this is a common mistake that many people are making, which makes them highly vulnerable to attacks. Because this conversation right now, for all you know, I could be asking you to give me personal facts about yourself, which then I could use to do certain levels of attacks. Like one of the most famous is brute force attack, where I'm just randomly making up passwords and trying to in order to gain access to your system. But there's a more advanced version where by gathering these personal facts about yourself, then gaining access to your computer's hash file, which is a file which is typically used to help identify your device. If I gain access to that information, then personal information, there's a specific computer tool that a lot of us security experts are very familiar with called John the Ripper. I pop in your personal details with your hash, and I can get a list of potential passwords that I can use against you. See, that's an example.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes there's also the concept of social engineering where I could act where just by making you lower your defenses, lower your guard, I could make you give up your password to me and you would not even think too much of it. But then I could go back home, try to gain access to your emails or your personal accounts, and I could wreak havoc there.
That's so
Or
interesting, Kevin. Sorry to cut you off.
so
Because when you were asking the question that do I have a number or a letter that's significant to me, I was about to say something, but I held back. I'm like, okay.
there you go. That's again why I say in cyber, that's why they say in
Yeah.
cybersecurity, you are you learn tactics from sociological and psychological studies. It's not just technical. You're
Mhm.
taking advantage of sociological techniques and psychological methods of manipulation, where by delving into common flaws in human nature, I can be able to trick people into giving me information. And that's actually how Kevin Mitnick committed his attacks. He would use he would use phone calls, just plain phone calls, engaging his targets in conversation, using multiple methods in which he would get them to lower their guard, and without even his targets even thinking twice about it, get them to give up crucial information, which then he can then use to access their systems. And
Mm.
again, that's how I'm explaining how he was able to do his attacks without a computer, without all the fancy malware, without the fancy Trojan horses, without the fancy remote access software that many attackers are familiar with a lot of script kiddies and all that, or the fancy written scripts that experts write and then share on the dark web.
Mm.
Where that's actually how a lot of a majority of the common security vulnerabilities and attacks that occur nowadays. It's because of that, not because of an intelligent piece of programming code that can be instilled into a computer to steal information. No, it can just because a person doesn't know how to keep their mouth shut. So, and another technique, it's called phishing. I could be sending you an email, which if you just skim it, looks like it comes from a legitimate company or organization or someone you trust, but it might be just someone pretending to be that. And they ask you for something like, oh, we want to help you with something. Could you just give us your information? And for all you know, you're giving away your most sensitive credential information to a person who's tricking you, and then that can get them access to your systems. So
That's
even
so
just
true.
answering an email that if you don't scrutinize it enough, I can trick you right now into allowing me to steal your information. And from that, I can commit certain acts such as identity theft or credit hacking, etc.
Yeah, yeah. And the
So
scams, those kind of scams are so common.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so that's the thing. This is the myth I'm dispelling. Most of cybersecurity is protecting systems from that. Oftentimes, it's just people don't know how to keep their mouths shut. I mean, this conversation right now, for all you know, I could be trying to trick you into giving me something useful. You don't know.
So I gotta keep quiet.
But no, that's the thing. It's
Okay,
a little
Kevin,
joke. It's a
take
joke I like.
over.
It's a joke. It's a joke I like to give to my
I know.
friends when
Yeah.
they ask me why do I, because after a couple years studying this subject, sometimes I don't know how to turn it off. Like sometimes I still have the mentality of a security expert, even when I'm just out in a dinner with my friends and I like to joke around. Sorry, I studied cybersecurity for 3 years. I've spent 3 years training how to be paranoid. But that's the kind of like the
Yeah.
scope of what it is. Like I'm trained to be paranoid, to find what if I do this or what if I do that. And sometimes it's not even just a social interaction. It can be something as simple as a person forgetting to close their laptop when they leave it or leaving it in the room, plain for people to see. And they can sit down there and try and copy some files from your computer for all you know. So most of today's vulnerabilities and security attacks are not really technical in nature. It's because people don't know how to protect their own information or their own devices. It's a matter of becoming too trusting.
Right.
Or they
Can our credit cards be used for that too?
absolutely. Because we share so much of our credit card information when we make Amazon accounts or when we're ordering something online, an attacker can try gaining access to any of those accounts. And if you save your credit card information there for the sake of making it convenient, if someone gains access to that account, they could also gain access to your credit card information. And bam, identity theft.
That's scary.
Yeah, that's why I also warn my parents, mama, papa, don't make these passwords so simple. Don't use obvious words. Like, I'm not going to go specifically because, again, paranoid,
Yeah.
but my parents like to use very obvious facts about themselves, where if you just learn who they are for like 10 minutes, they could potentially figure out a person's, my family's passwords.
I know what you're talking about.
Whereas for me, I create passwords with like 10-digit alphanumeric. So like I'm saying 10 characters with numbers, letters, and special symbols to create enough of a variety where if you try doing a brute force attack, like meaning trying to hard code, trying to guess it, it could take someone as long as 9 billion years.
That's
But
cool. But how do you remember all those then?
I don't. I keep them in a secure place. Sometimes I save them, but only with software that I trust. Otherwise, I put them in a secure place and I will never tell anyone where I keep my passwords.
Yeah.
And so because of that, very few cybersecurity experts are actually of that caricature that idea people have where you're like a expert in a room and you have a bunch of screens in front of you, and if you just like press this button or hard code a quick command, you could save the entire world. Normally, that's a fictionalized, glorified idea of a security operations center. So what that is, we call them SOCs. They're 24-hour facilities which you put in specific experts who are trained in security engineering and security analysis, and they can quickly do incident response, which is like real-time response to any potential security incidents. So that's what I'm gonna go on next. There are many different pathways in security. You can either be many recent graduates like myself often start off as security analysts. So what that is that we use security tools that are provided for us from our companies that scan, review, and monitor systems. And if we find something that's potentially out of the ordinary, we review it, we